Yes, sir. We good? Perfect. Good evening, and welcome to the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District's Board of Trustee Candidate Forum. My name is Jason Culpepper, and I have the honor of serving as tonight's moderator. I'm publisher for Community Impact Newspaper, the Houston area's most read and largest circulated newspaper. I'm a proud graduate of Jersey Village High School, as well as currently serving as a trustee for the Cy-Fair Educational Foundation, and I'm thrilled to serve on stage tonight alongside these leaders. Tonight's forum will be 1 hour in length and will provide each candidate an opportunity to introduce themselves and field questions from the audience. It is our hope that this forum allows each candidate to voice their positions and reasons for pursuing a place on the school board, while giving the public a chance to hear the candidates respond to questions of importance to them. Tonight's forum is currently being broadcast live over Comcast Channel 16, along with the district website at www.cfisd.net. Tonight's process will be conducted as follows. The candidates will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves and share information that they feel the community should know about their candidacy. Once we begin the question and answer portion of the forum, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. Time will be kept by Holly Reichert, Secretary to the Superintendent, as well as Secretary to the Board of Trustees. You will notice the timer in front of the tables. This timer will be programmed to warn you when you have 30 seconds remaining in your introduction and when you have 15 seconds remaining in your response to a question. You will not be cut off in the middle of a sentence or thought, but please wrap up your statement within the next few seconds. I will alternate who answers first from question to question. The election will be held jointly with this year's general election. Election day is Tuesday, November 5th, and the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Early voting takes place from October 21st to November 1st. Times and locations of early voting may be obtained by visiting harrisvotes.com. You can also access Election Day voting sites at this website. I want to remind the audience that all question cards must be submitted prior to the conclusion of the opening statements in order to be considered for this evening. Also, as a reminder, if you would please ensure that your cell phones are put on vibrate or silence. At this time, I would like to introduce the candidates as they will appear on the ballot. For position 1, Tom Jackson, running unopposed. Position 2, Julie Heineman, also running unopposed. For position 3, Gilbert Sarabia, who is unable to attend tonight, and I will read a statement on his behalf. Unfortunately, I am unable to be with you tonight. My mom, who suffers from numerous health complications, has been living with my wife Ginger and I for the last 2 years. Her health has deteriorated during that time, requiring more intense nursing care from us. About a month ago, it was necessary to move her to a residential facility. This morning, the staff of that facility let me know that she is in critical condition and does not have many more hours on this earth. I am with her and my family and know you all understand my absence. Please keep my mom and your family in your prayers. We absolutely will. Next on position 3 is Ryan Irving Jr. Also in position 3, Natalie Blossingame. And lastly, position 4, Debbie Blackshear, running unopposed. Are there any questions from the candidates before we get started? As a final reminder, please, any questions you have on your cards that have not been submitted, please raise your hand and we will pick them up at this time, as we will not be taking any further questions. Thank you. Excuse me. So at this point, we will start with Tom Jackson for your opening statements.
is very important for the future of our school district. A little bit about me. With 42 years of experience as a CPA, I bring analytical skills for review of educational goals and financial matters. Having been a teacher, I know the importance of supporting our teachers and students in the classroom. Back in the days when I had hair, I had the privilege of teaching out of this textbook called Theory and Practice. If you look at the title page, you will see that my name happens to be there. I have never forgotten the lessons about theory and practice that I tried to teach to my students, and I bring those concepts with me into the boardroom as well as out into the community. I have served 30 years as a locally elected official, the last 8 as a CFISD trustee, the first 22 as a MUD board director. What could be more precious than our children and then our potable water for voters to entrust me to? Developing a global view, I have served as one of 42 for the state of Texas on TASB, and I have spent the time researching different educational concepts. The most important to me is that of pre-K, and have presented throughout the state, but also on the implications for a fast-growth school district such as ours. Thank you once again for coming tonight and listening, and I think you're going to enjoy the next hour.
Mrs. Heineman?
First, I'd like to wish my daughter a happy birthday. Today is her 18th birthday, so happy birthday, Allie, who's watching at home. My name is Julie Heineman, and I am a proud parent of 2 CFISD students. My daughters have attended Cyfair schools since kindergarten, and I'm grateful for all their teachers and the exceptional education that they are receiving. I've been an active volunteer in the district since the girls started school, volunteering in the library, on PTO boards, as a bus buddy, with booster clubs for band and drill team, and most importantly to me, mentoring at-risk students. I was recognized for my volunteer work in 2018 as a CFISD Friend of Education, and this year by the Texas State Board of Education as a Hero for Children Award recipient. I also volunteered as the co-chair for the Long Range Planning Committee, leading a group of community members focusing on our district needs relating to student population growth, technology, safety and security, and asset protection. This experience gave me a stronger understanding of our district facilities and finances, and allowed me the opportunity to build relationships with many incredible people across our diverse district. I'm also an advocate for public education, having extensive training in school finance, educational equity issues, and school board governance. I was the chair of the Community Leadership Committee, an advocacy group engaging our local community and elected officials to advocate on behalf of our district. I've traveled many times to Austin to meet with our state legislatures and even testified to the Texas Commission for Public School Finance. I was recently appointed to fill a vacancy on the school board because the current board had confidence in my ability to serve. My focus is on student outcomes, specifically early literacy and post-secondary readiness. We must provide the resources necessary to ensure all of our children have opportunities to succeed. I believe that I have a strong foundation of knowledge, skills, and experiences for serving on the CFISD school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irving.
Good evening, Cyfair. My name is Ryan C. Irving Jr. I'm currently seeking a trustee seat position for Cyfair Independent School District Position 3. Before I start, I want to send my remarks and my regards to Mr. Sarabia and his family. I moved in the Cyfair area when I was 2 years old. I come from a single-parent household. My father has been incarcerated since I was 2 years old. During my sophomore year of high school, I also was almost homeless. During my senior year of high school, I applied to Sam Houston State University, which has a 70.4% acceptance rate, and did not get in. I applied to the University of Houston, did not get in. I went to Lone Star Community College, and I met a good mentor met a man who's now a good mentor of mine, which is Dr. Benny Lambert. Also during my time at Lone Star, I also served under Mayor Sylvester Turner as an intern. And some of my responsibilities was fiscally. I was in some of the post-Harvey efforts, and I also dealt with learning a bit of the city budget as well. After Lone Star, I applied to the University of Houston's Honors College, which is top 10 in the United States in honors colleges, and I got in. During my time at the University of Houston, I've not only become an honor student, but I've expanded my knowledge. I believe it's extremely important as serving as a trustee that you have a background in secondary education because it's very important in leading the next generation of students to the future. Some of my top 3 issues are representation, school safety, and educator benefits. I believe that those 3 issues are extremely important. And if I'm blessed enough to receive your vote and get elected as your next trustee, I have a plan to implement all 3 of these policies with my fellow trustee members and to make sure that this district could be better situated with those 3 issues. I believe that it's extremely important to not only elect someone of my age, but to represent the actual community. The reason that a board was created is to represent all constituents, backgrounds, and people of it. And I believe that includes electing somebody my age that also has been through 21st century Texas education. Thank you.
Mrs. Blossingame?
Such a pleasure to be here this evening. I also extend my condolences to Mr. Saravi and his family. And I also want to thank my parents for being here. 40 years ago, my parents, like many of the families in our community, sought this country and the opportunities for education that we have. And so I appreciate that they have done that to afford me the opportunity to have a great education and be able to have a successful adulthood. And that is what we would want for all of our Cy-Fair graduates. I come to this trustee election in several capacities. First is I am a current parent of a student in our school system. She's thriving and thrilled at Aragon Middle School. She has amazing teachers who meet her needs academically and social emotionally. And so I come with a cup full, pleased with the way my child's own education is going. But I also see that the landscape for education is a shifting one, and our demographics are shifting. And so we also need to continue to look forward for innovations and ideas that keep us on the front edge, the strongest and the premier district in the area. To that end, I bring experience as an educator. I have worked in urban education, in elementary, middle, and high school for 27 years, having on the front lines understanding and working towards educational equity and excellence as a school principal, a teacher, a district leader. And so the role of the board is obviously different in a governance role, but having an understanding of how the components come together, what allows a teacher to be successful, what allows a school leader to be successful, I think can bring an important voice to the board. And finally, I come as a community volunteer. I have had the privilege of volunteering at our elementaries, middle, and high schools in the district over the past years as both a global volunteer in a partnership with our church where we've adopted Hare Grove Elementary, of course, in my own child's school. And with that, I get to see all the future and the promise and all the really promising practices we have out there and all the great people who work in our system. And so I seek this opportunity to serve them. What I represent for our school district or for what I put as a slate is I represent excellence, safety, voice, and yes, choice for families in Cy-Fair. And I would just like to give a greeting to families in Spanish. Gracias a los que están participando en este proceso. Su voz es importante y sus niños son importantes. Gracias.
Thank you. Ms. Blackshear.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Blackshear. And 41 years ago, this past Sunday, my husband and I moved to Cypress from the Houston Heights area to raise our family, largely due to the quality of education that Cy-Fair ISD was noted for. We have 2 sons who went through Lambkin, Arnold, and Cy-Fair High School. We're successful graduates and are now successful citizens in our Cy-Fair community. And I have 5 beautiful grandchildren who attend Cy-Fair ISD as well. I worked for Cy-Fair Federal Credit Union for 28 and a half years, the last 18 and a half as president, and feel like my experience there leading the credit union through a major growth time has qualified me for this position. As a president of the credit union, we were very active in the community, and I volunteered in various roles with the school district, leading the district through the 2014 bond election, as well as serving on the Cy-Fair Educational Foundation for the past 26 years and the Cy-Hope Board of Directors for the past 11 years. I love this community. I love this school district. I've enjoyed serving these past 4 years. I feel like there's still a lot that I can do in the next 4 years, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to continue serving our school district. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go into the questions that we've been provided for this evening. This first question will be for all candidates, and we'll start with Mr. Jackson. School boards often have to make difficult choices between competing financial priorities. Please describe an experience that has prepared you to maintain fiscal oversight over a budget the size of our districts and to understand and resolve complex budget issues. And how would you make program or professional budget choices between competing priorities?
Well, first, what have I experienced that would put me into a position to be able to properly exercise governance over a budget? First, the bulk of my financial career has been that of a chief financial officer of companies public and private. And so I was in charge of the budget for each and every one of those companies, not only in setting it, but monitoring it. When I chaired the CLC, it was during the time period where we had to cut 20% out of the budget of this school district. That was painful. And I remember when I advocated for keeping a program in the budget, the question came to me, that's fine. How many teachers do you want to fire to keep that program? These are all difficult questions, but it put me in good stead to give that leadership over the budgetary process for our district.
Ms. Heineman?
One thing I learned from my experience as co-chair for the Long Range Planning Committee was the importance of engaging various stakeholders in our community. I think it's important when you're making these big decisions and evaluating different competing programs that will pull on our various limited resources. It is important to engage all the stakeholders in our community so that all voices are heard. What I found through that experience is that sometimes you meet in big groups, but sometimes just meeting one-on-one with folks, give them a chance to share their thoughts, share their experiences, and have their voices heard. I think it's important not only to engage all stakeholders, but also do that cost-benefit analysis to see where do we find the greatest return on investment for our investments in programs in the district. So those are two areas that I think that would be important in making those, establishing those priorities.
Mr. Irving?
So, like I said in my opening remarks, I am a former intern for Mayor Sylvester Turner, and at that time I was in one of the actually several Harvey relief budget meetings. And so I've worked with not just Mayor Turner, but the different people in the city of Houston to put a plan together for over the next 10 years to go ahead and put things in place to make our flooding problem in the city of Houston more safer for all of our Houstonians. Also, I've been in several city budget meetings as well, and the current population of students in the district is 117,000, and I've worked on a budget which represents 3.5 million Houstonians. So I believe that's what qualifies me to be able to make different budgetary decisions when it comes to deciding between two factors or two different programs. Now, what would I do to go ahead and do? What would I do to go to decide this process? I would ask every single person, not just in my community, but I would try to involve every single person in this process, because this is not just my school district, and I'm not just your trustee. This is our school district, and I'm your trustee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bossingame.
The difficult conversations are first driven by the goals and the outcomes that we've set for the district. With the board monitoring system, the board has gone through an extensive opportunity to set priorities, and so those should be those should be developed in cooperation with voice from the community, and those should be a governing document or a governing set of goals and outcomes for the system. And as far as my skills in fiscal oversight, I have had the opportunity to run a school district, a school budget, and also support and participate in the process developing a budget at a school system level. But more importantly, I also can understand when I've seen those decisions made, how that impacted me as a teacher in my classroom, how that impacted me as a school leader, and how that was critical to the ability to effectively meet our goals. And so I also have had some formal training recently. I did a certificate in education or school finance through Georgetown University in order to be able to have sound principles and understanding, but also to be able to learn more about processes and different ways that different systems across the nation are addressing shorter funds, but needs to really address equity and excellence. And so again, all fiscal decisions should be driven by the goals of excellence, safety, voice, and choice.
Thank you. Ms. Blackshear?
Well, while at the credit union back in 2001 and 2008, when we experienced economic downturns, although they didn't affect my credit union directly, it did affect our members, and as such, we had to make some tough decisions at that time and prioritize. Along with Mr. Jackson, I served on the CLC at that same time, and later on when we were having tough times with the Texas legislature and they were cutting, and it was a trickle-down effect, and we had to help the school district prioritize and make those decisions based on what was best for our students and for our school district going forward.
Thank you. This next question will be directed to position 3 candidates. We'll start with Ms. Blossomgame. Being a board member involves being part of a team. What experience do you have as part of a team that would relate to this position?
Appreciate the question because this is an outstanding group of people doing really good work in a really quality school system. So coming into a position in position 3, it's to bring ideas and add to the conversation. It's not to disrupt. And so I have had the opportunity to lead and work with and leading a school team towards a goal of excellence from low performing to excellent outcomes is done in a team process. And so I've had the opportunity to work with other leaders, to work with a larger leadership team, to work with a whole faculty, to work with individual teams of teachers, to work with our families, our parents, the community at large, in getting their support to the school. And so that has been not just in a short term, but also over a 7-year process where that has to be real. You have to show up with authenticity and transparency. You have to win the hearts and minds of people, and you have to commission them in the goals. And so I would say running a school and taking from low performing to exemplary is the best example I can give.
Mr. Irving?
I will first off start by using my example as a student. I played when I went to Lane Creek High School. I played basketball. That's team. When I was also in speech and debate. That's teamwork. And also I was an intern for the city of Houston. And some of those decisions that I've made, like I said, was actually my part of the team effort. Was part of it was my input. Like I said, working on a $3.5 billion dollar. Working on a budget to represent 3.5 million Houstonians. Working for the Harvey relief efforts to make sure that we implement things to make sure that we fix our flooding problems across the city of Houston. And all of those things, are extremely significant and affect a lot of individuals. So those are some of the things that I have done to show you that I have worked in a team effort. And if elected as your next trustee, I will do the same with my fellow trustee members as well. Thank you.
Thank you. An additional question for position 3. Mr. Irving, we'll start with you. Is there a decision or policy enacted by the school board that you would like to revisit if elected?
One policy that's currently implemented that I would like to revisit, not necessarily to take it away, but strengthen it, is our no tolerance for bullying policy. That's a policy that I believe that's extremely important, and it was actually implemented while I was a student by some of our trustees that are sitting up here with me tonight. But I do want to make sure that, like I said, my second issue is school safety. And school safety does not just mean making sure that an intruder does not come and do harm to any of our teachers, administrators, or students. It also is making sure that every student can come onto campus and feel safe, right? And so, in that being said, there is some, me being a former student, there is a little bit of things that we can work on, especially dealing with that policy. And so I would like to strengthen that policy and build upon the progress that Cypher has already made in that effort. Like I said, I believe it's extremely important no matter where you come from, no matter what religion you worship, or no matter what sexual orientation that you decide to be. But I want to make sure that every single child, when they step into our schools, that they can feel like they're in a home environment and feel safe. And so when it comes to our no tolerance for bullying policy, I would like to revisit that and implement different things that we can structureize and build on that. Thank you.
Ms. Blossomgame?
I'll speak to a decision versus policy. There are so many wonderful iterations and interesting new instructional opportunities that we're trying in the district. And I have to say that the administration and the board of this district does a really good job of building programs with quality, taking their time, as Tom described it in the last board workshop, incrementalism, doing things in a way that builds them with excellence. One thing that I'd like to see us do begin the building process on is dual language education. The state has just approved in House Bill 3 really incredible funding that doesn't only fund the limited English proficient or the English language learner students, but even the English speaking students who would participate in the program. The reason they've put money behind it is because it's proven very effective in the state's own research for outcomes for students in the state. It doesn't just serve English speaking students to learn Spanish, but the students who are Spanish speakers in the program or other languages, Chinese, Arabic, whatever it might be, those students show cognitive and academic and linguistic growth, and also understanding across cultures happens and sociocultural processes in this program. So I would like to see us, I know the concern is that there would be a shortage of teachers. However, there are absolutely ways to run the program with no more bilingual teachers. But also, we are a destination. As in the same board workshop, when we had to talk about hiring pre-K teachers, it was stated that we're a system of choice for hiring, and we are a district people want to work in, and that is true. And so I'd like to see us revisit that decision to move to begin the incremental process of building quality, because that is a choice for families, and it doesn't have to be everywhere. The decision that every program has to be everywhere, maybe that's another thing we can revisit.
All right, thank you. As a reminder, please try your best to stick to time so that we can get through all tonight's questions and answers. This question will be directed for all candidates. We'll start with Ms. Heineman. What are your top considerations, or what would be your top considerations when deciding between multiple options for school attendance boundaries?
That's a great question. In fact, we're about to address that. That's coming up soon as we prepare to open up middle school number 19 at the beginning of the 2020 school year. What I've observed in past years as the board has made these tough decisions with boundary changes is looking at the demographics of of residents, keeping neighborhoods together, I think is very important. Look at so that neighbors, kids are growing up together, continue to attend the same schools. I know we look at transportation issues, how long kiddos would be on the school bus. I think that's also very important as well. And then also campus utilization. We don't want to have schools that are underutilized and have too many open seats, and then schools that are overutilized and are cramped. So I think that's a big part of why we look at boundary changes is campus utilization, so that we're using those campuses most effectively.
Thank you. Mr. Irving.
My top priority when it comes to boundaries, to make sure that when we do and address this issue, to make sure that there's not too many children in one classroom, to make sure, like Ms. Heineman said, to make sure that all of our children are dispersed equally throughout our schools. I remember when I was at Langham Creek that I had a classroom that was 35, that had 35 students in it, and that's not okay. Because in a classroom, you probably have about 3 or 4 students that are ESL. You have another about 4 students that are slightly dyslexic, and then you have another 7 to 10 students that just don't understand the subject. So when it comes to making boundary decisions, we need to make those decisions based off of, okay, how many students live in a certain area in which we're trying to make the boundary for, and how many students can fit into the necessary school that we're trying to put them into, and making sure that we kind of get an influence or our decision making is based off of how many students can fit in a certain classroom within that institution. So my decision making, my top priority with boundaries will be making sure that every single student can, feel like they can have the attention of their teachers in their classrooms without feeling overcrowded as well.
Ms. Flossingame?
I would say one of the top considerations would definitely need to be stability. I did notice the last time, and I was glad at that point it wasn't me making those decisions, but some of the easier students to move or consider for moving are people who are renting in apartment complexes. However, we have a 20-point to 10-point achievement gap between students of color and white students in our system in every single area tested from the state. And so I think we would also need to look at the fact that we're creating stability and relationships for students that might be more vulnerable populations that deserve the opportunity to stay stable and in their family and stuff in a feeder pattern. I also think looking at those considerations early enough to where families, we have such amazing school spirit in our system. We have people who love their school, making sure that the family doesn't bond with the high school before they would have to make a change, to look ahead for those. And then also for space utilization, I think if we offer a few programs of choice in the system, and we offer those in schools where we do have a space utilization issue that we could maximize, that may be something that could alleviate some areas and be great use of the space without having to disrupt families and their school zones.
Thank you. Ms. Blackshear.
Yes. Well, much like many across the table have talked about, when we discuss boundaries, always foremost is trying to keep our neighborhoods together and to affect the least number of students when making these decisions. We also look at feeder patterns, because what middle school and high school do these schools go to, and try that even if we have to move students, that they still will stay within the same feeder pattern for the same middle school and same high school as they would have originally attended. And classroom utilization is critical in that discussion as well, because we try our best each year to estimate the number of students for a particular school. However, because we are such a great district, we find that every school year during the summer, we have a lot of families that move into our district, and sometimes it happens that school starts and we have more students than we had anticipated, and thus we try to shift classrooms, and sometimes we move teachers too to other schools.
Mr. Jackson.
This is one of the most important decisions that a board working together as a team has to make. When I came on the board 8 years ago, the board at that time developed a paradigm to look very closely to make certain that all future decisions would follow a model. And so the cornerstones of that approach was, one, try very hard to keep neighborhoods together. The second part of it was to honor the feeder pattern, to honor elementaries going to the middle schools, going then to the same high school, so the relationships that our children, but also their parents make at each level remain to be honored. And then underneath that, we took a look at certain other attributes. One is proximity, how close, how many major arteries do you have to cross? What is the campus capacity? Developing a capacity a little bit larger than the stated capacity, but also not letting the capacity fall too low, because when that happens, your resources are limited and you're not serving the students in the best fashion that you would like. And then another very subtle observation is to try and reduce future changes. We know that we are in a growing district, but certain areas of the district happen to have become mature, and as a result, you have negative growth. So you want to reduce the changes that you know will happen 2 and 3 years in the future when you make those decisions of today.
Thank you. Next question will be for all candidates. We will begin with Mr. Irving. Employee insurance premiums currently are at an all-time high, and projections show that insurance premiums will continue to rise in the coming year. What is Cypher ISD's plan to address employee insurance premiums, and how will you, as a board member, evaluate options to potentially remove the district from the ever-rising costs associated with being part of the TRS Active Care Program?
Thank you. Good question. And actually, I can tell you what I would like to bring to the board if I'm elected your next trustee. First of all, for the past 8 years, teachers have received a 3% increase in their pay when their insurance goes up 7%. Now, one of the problems is that Texas is number two, the second highest state insurance premiums in the United States of America. Secondly, we're in a terrible contract bind called TRS. Now, I have a plan to not only go ahead and decrease the amount of inflation that teachers receive, but also a plan to also get us out of TRS as well. So, number one, the first thing that the board needs to do is they need to raise the educators' insurance above the state minimum. That's the first thing that we need to do. The second thing that we need to do is that we need to get out of TRS by any means necessary, including take legal action if necessary. The third thing that we should do is we should hold our elected officials more accountable. I believe that just insurance just in the state is too high for teachers and for everyone. And one thing that we can do is we can put the same plan that we used for HB3, which took students, administrators, and trustees across the state, went to Austin, and they lobbied for that bill to be passed during this past legislative session, and it passed. And if we can use that same formula and implement that when it comes to the educator insurance and insurance just across the state in general, I believe that we will be successful.
Thank you.
Excellent answer, Mr. Irving. I would echo this group and many of you out there have proven that we can have a voice and it can make a difference for our elected officials. Understanding that the TRS, the cost-benefit analysis of looking at that contract and that agreement, it might be something that might be too heavy or too large of a load on the system in short term, and so the lobbying would be important. But in the meantime, I feel like for teachers, with House Bill 3, there was a little bit of a reprieve, maybe not as large in Cypher as some systems, but that did allow teachers a little bit more pay. And so we would need to look at that differential and make sure that that pay was really a pay raise, and with the insurance premiums, and work to see as we make those tough financial decisions like we talked about before, that we can make sure that that percentage that the teacher is paying for insurance doesn't take away from what the state intended, to show teachers that they are valued and that their compensation should be fair and represent the importance of their job. And so I would say that we have our single most important resource in our system is our teachers, who are the front line with our students each day, and they need to feel valued, and that should be a priority.
Thank you. Ms. Blackshear.
Yes, I agree. The premiums that our employees are asked to pay are entirely too much. But that said, as an employer previously, I can tell you that each year when we visited our insurance premiums at the credit union, I was in a very bad mood because I was so upset with our insurance carriers and what our premiums were going to look like for the next year. And while I didn't want to pass it on to employees, I had no choice. We are no different in Cypress-Fairbanks ISD, and I can assure you that our staff works very hard in Austin trying to advocate for lower insurance costs, and one of the problems is TRS care. And I think the largest voice that Austin could hear would be for you, our educators, our community, to voice your displeasure with the legislature at the election ballot, and write letters to our elected officials, because actually the control is in their hands. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
Let's revisit on insurance. Let's remember where we came from. When I was a rookie board member, I quizzed the CFO about insurance accruals. Turns out that year we needed an additional $10 million to put into the accrual. Same question next year. $20 million underfunded, and that was a trend that was going to continue. Secondly, insurance costs are going up for everybody. I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. I was lucky enough to have MD Anderson and have the bulk of my career, the bulk of my care covered with MD Anderson until my insurance company pulled out of the state of Texas. United Healthcare just announced they will drop the Methodist system from their insurance policy. All of that are ways that you can reduce the insurance premium, but I know if I didn't have MD Anderson, I would not be alive today. Some things cost, and yes, the cost of insurance is very high here in the state of Texas, but that is not an issue that a school board member can resolve. And let's remember something else. We have an $80 million penalty assessed against this district because we have the optional homestead exemption without offsetting industrial tax base. We also adopted a $27 million deficit budget for the coming year. Very difficult to enhance insurance benefits when you're looking at numbers of that size.
Ms. Heineman.
I would agree that health insurance is a national problem, and we are certainly feeling that here locally. personally, our family, we are self-insured. We purchase our health insurance on the open market, and we also feel those high premiums and high deductibles. I think it's important to also note that in our school district, 50% of our employees participate in TRS active care, and 50% seek insurance elsewhere. We obviously have to solve this problem, and as Ms. Blackshear stated, this is something that we need to work together to address with our state legislatures. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question is for position 3, and we'll start with Ms. Blossingame. When and why did you decide to run for the board, and what do you have that your opponents do not?
When and why? The when would be, I would say it's 5 years ago. The why is I feel called to do that, to serve in this capacity. It's not my first, first idea of fun, and it's definitely, it cuts into your leisure time, but it's critical that we are, it's critical for our community that we are educating our students well. It is especially out here where we joke about the president of the Chamber of Commerce and the superintendent being our government. It's critical that we absolutely meet the need of students, and so my when and why I've answered. And what do I have? I have passion. I have passion for students and people. I love students and people. I have experience serving students and people. And I also have a calling. I believe that I have ideas that I'd like to bring that are important to the fiber of our school system. I also bring the very fresh perspective of a 13-year-old student in our system, where I know day to day right now the decisions that we're making, how it's impacting safety, motivation, college and career readiness, literacy, and those are what I bring that are different than the opponents I have in position 3.
Thank you. Mr. Irving.
I decided I was going to run for school board probably around last spring break. And why am I running? Well, I'm running to give back to those that have once gave to me. I always say public education saved my life. Some of my former administrators actually asked me to run because they would like to see a change. They would like to see a new voice on the board, and they would also like to see a new face. What do I have that my other opponents don't have? My youth. Not only, it's not the perspective of a student. I am that student. And not only was I that student, but I'm a student who's went through 21st century education. I believe that's extremely important. Some of the educational aspects have changed vastly from just decade to decade, especially from century to century. And I believe that you would like, not just that you would like, but that you need somebody on that board when it comes to making educational decisions in the classroom, that's somebody that not only was in the classroom, but can advocate for others and has seen others active in a classroom as well. And I know the educational different policies that the board has passed for the last 15 years, I've actually am the only candidate that has felt the effects of them. So I can tell you what does work, and I can tell you what doesn't work when it comes to a classroom environment.
Thank you. All right, another all-candidate question, and we will begin with Mrs. Blossingame. In a district that has become a majority-minority district, what will you do or how will you work to ensure equitable practices for students of color to cut down on overrepresentation in alternative schools and a disproportionate number of referrals?
I think that was a really healthy discussion at the last board workshop, looking at the board monitoring system for exactly that progress we've made in school suspensions, out of school suspensions, placements in DAP and JJAEP. I did notice in that conversation that there were some really good questions asked of the board members about the increase in those optional placements that were not mandatory but were discretionary. But I didn't hear discussion about representation in that conversation. The question I kept asking is ask it, and I know that's one of those that maybe it was asked in the background, and I know that there would be reports coming in the monitoring system. However, I think that the same achievement gap that exists is exacerbated by this overrepresentation of students of color in the disciplinary process, and so I think the district's on a very positive path with PBIS. PBIS has at its heart positive ways to engage the whole community in building and supporting other students and everyone to success. I do think that we list maybe tokenly some restorative practices, but I'd like us to see where it's not working for students, where the students are still struggling, what else we can do to do that in a culturally relevant way. And I think that we just have to hold ourselves accountable to the data, and that indeed that we will have less representation, not overrepresent any longer. And I think we should also attach that to the academic needs of students, because oftentimes behavior, when you mention, kids in a classroom with dyslexia, do you know that the Texas prison population is 47% dyslexic? And most of them, there's a way larger percentage who actually struggle in the literacy area. So lots of times behaviors are a mask for other concerns academically.
Thank you. Ms. Blackshear.
Yes. Since I've been on the board, we have seen data that demonstrates that PBIS is working in our schools. Our numbers are coming down as far as the number of students referred for expulsion and other types of events. We do also see that we are keeping our students in the classroom longer so that they're not missing class for behavior, and we are finding those alternative ways to help our students deal with anger. Just a couple weeks ago, I visited an elementary school that has a new program called Selective Emotional Learning, where they are teaching students at a young age how to deal with anger issues and other emotional issues. And I see this as a means of down the road, as children enter middle school and high school, that we will see fewer behavioral problems.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson.
This is always foremost in the mind of any trustee. And I would remind the viewing audience that I did, in fact, ask that question of admin as they were making the presentation. And I requested them to review the data that they had by all sub-pops, but also by gender. And they'll be reporting back to us. So we do review the information and stay on top of it. The board does have a considered policy in moving ahead on this. Dr. John Ogletree took the lead on it, and he set up in the board monitoring system a target of reducing out-of-class suspension by 50%, on the theory, which I believe is accurate, that when the student's in the classroom, they have a greater opportunity to learn than when they don't happen to be in the classroom. The PBIS system does work. We do have restorative practices that are not token. They are real. And I applaud our teachers as well as our principals for using those restorative practices.
Thank you, Ms. Heineman.
I appreciate the question. The fact that the board has built this issue into our annual goals is significant, because what is measured is what's monitored, and what's monitored and measured is what is valued by not just the Board of Trustees, but everyone in our community. So this is an important issue for us. A big part of it, while we're looking at the data, is just looking at how we can address these issues. And a significant part of that is training. So the district is continuing to look for opportunities to provide training in implicit bias at the teacher level, at the administrative level, and at the board level, so that we can make better decisions and choices and policies for our students. I think it's significant that we are looking at tools like PBIS to provide positive reinforcement and early intervention before children get to the point where there are negative consequences for their behavior.
Thank you. Mr. Irving.
Well, I think we're thinking about this all the wrong way. And I personally, just from my experience, I don't think PBIS is that effective. We need to talk about the student prison to pipeline ratio, first of all. Students of color get harsher punishments in schools than students that are not of color, first of all. Second of all, we need to talk about at-risk students. Now, every single student that misbehaves or does not, or has the behavioral issue, doesn't mean that they're a terrible student. Sometimes it means that it's a cry for help, and I was one of them. And I think it's extremely important to make sure that we don't just continually over punishing a student until let's look and examine that student's home life. Let's look and examine why is the student acting out, because like I said before, sometimes it's a cry for help. And I'm very thankful and fortunate by a man named Mr. Holloway, who is the CEO of Pace Youth. During this summer, he helped get Indicator 14 added to the Texas Education at Risk list. And what basically this is, he helped Senator Boris Miles of District 13 get that bill passed through the Senate. And not only that, but it helped students that are just like me who had an incarcerated parent. And I believe students that have an incarcerated parent should be added to the at-risk list.
Thank you. Well, congratulations. We have made it to the end of the questions. At this time, we want each of you to have your closing remarks. You will each have 2 minutes, and we will go in reverse order. So that means you, Ms. Blackshear.
Thank you. You know, there's a saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I have demonstrated that sentiment by my service to this community and to the school district. My passion is kids and education. I am very pleased that I will be able to serve the students, the administrators, the staff, the taxpayers in this community for another 4 years. Although I don't have an opponent on the ballot, I still ask for your vote on November the 5th. Thank you for this opportunity.
Ms. Bossingame?
I think the voters of Cy-Fair and the students of Cy-Fair have a great future ahead because there's so many quality candidates on this stage, passionate about seeing our system, our students succeed. And I would appreciate your vote on November 5th, bringing a voice of experience, the voice of a current parent in our system, bringing some insight from educational experiences. I will ask for your support on the election day, remembering that I am someone who's looking to bring excellence for all, including closing the achievement gap, understanding that safety is critical. It's first and foremost in the minds of our students every day, given their social media life, making sure that they are engaged in that. I do believe that's critical that we do engage all of our citizens, like you, fine citizens today here listening, to have a voice in our system. And I think that if we listen to the few families that are not finding what they need in our system yet, and we offer them some choice, that we can make sure we are the best choice for every family in CFISD. Thank you for your time tonight.
First of all, I want to start by thanking everyone for this opportunity. I want to thank for those who asked me to run. I plan to not only be your next leader in your community, not only your next trustee, but I want to be your next champion. I want to lead the next generation of students to success into the future. And I hope you join me in this effort. What I need you to, each and every one of you to do, I need you to please go to RyanIrvingforCFISD.com, click on the link that says Pledge to Vote, and help me in this effort. I can't think of a better way to serve those that have once saved me. Public education saved my life. And it's really touching just to see all the support that I have. But I always say that this is not my campaign, that this is our campaign. Like I said, my first issue is representation. I want to make sure that every single person has an equal seat at the table. I said my second issue was school safety. I want to make sure that, that $1.76 billion bond that got passed in May by 70.4% of the constituents in Cy-Fair, I want to make sure that that $207.7 million of that bond that is going towards campus safety and security is being spent efficiently and equitably. And my last issue, educator benefits, I recently spoke to you that I want to help lower insurance for teachers. Teachers are the foundation of our society. And frankly, I don't believe they're treated, I believe that they should be treated better. Teachers help lead the next generation of students and put them in a position like me to be your next leaders, to be your next doctors, lawyers, politicians. And I think it's extremely important that not just me, but I want to bring all of the younger champions in our community that currently do not have a voice, and I would like to give them one. So I want to start by thanking TSTA. I want to thank Randy Johnson, Donna Lord, and Sakina Bradford. I also want to thank my mother and my best friend, Evan Schumar, sitting in the audience. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming along with me on this journey. So I need you on November 5th to elect me, Ryan C. Irving Jr., as your next trustee and your next champion in this Cy-Fair community. Thank you, God bless you, and may God bless Cy-Fair.
In my opening statement, I said that I have a strong foundation of knowledge, skills, and experiences that have prepared me for serving as a CFISD trustee. I also have a heart for students and for public schools who open their door to all kids, who teach all kids no matter their background, their test scores, or what the preconceived expectations may be. In Cyfair, we believe that all kids have the right and deserve an exceptional education so they can reach their full potential. For many of our students, school is a place not just to learn math or science or social studies, but it's to learn the social and emotional skills to help them be productive citizens. It's where our teachers believe in you and help you to believe in yourself. It's where our kids learn to work with others to solve problems, personal, local, and global. For some students, school is a safe place to feel loved and protected and to believe that you have a future. And that's what school was for me when I was growing up. I think that's why I'm so passionate about public education and feel so strongly about advocating for our public schools. As a taxpayer, I want to ensure that we continue to hold high standards for financial accountability and transparency, that we maintain low administrative cost ratios, and we focus our resources where they have the greatest value, which is our classrooms. I believe that our school board trustees should reflect the vision and values of the community, and I believe that I do. I'll work to ensure that we allocate resources with a sharp focus on student achievement while being fiscally responsible. I'll continue building positive relationships with students, parents, teachers, administrators, business leaders, faith organizations, and elected officials, because we're all partners in providing education for the children who deserve it in our community. Thank you for your support and trust for me as a CFISD trustee.
We now come to a close of this evening. I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here in person or viewing at home. I also look forward to serving our community and our teachers and our students for 4 more years, to be part of a team that provides a network where the academic leadership and the academic talent of this district can flourish by providing a very firm support and a consistent view. We know that culture will always trump strategy. And culture, though, is very fragile. And it is the board's position to protect the culture of this school district going forth. Our board works very hard at understanding that we are all about governance, but not management. I look forward to entertaining novel and different ideas as we go forth, which is something that this district is known for. This district is an innovative district, even if we take incremental steps in pursuing that. So, for example, can we use District of Innovations to pursue insurance alternatives? We don't know until we explore it. Can we take the bonus for graduation and turn it into a feeder system for potential scholarships? We don't know until we take a look at it. What can we do to increase the number of gifted and talented children and increase the identification, but also their nurturing? What can we do to take our students who are almost there, almost ready for college, and provide their parents and those students diagnostic skills and a pathway to improve their future outcome? Thank you to the community for entrusting me with your children. It is the most highest honor that you can give. I remain your humble servant. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, incumbents, on behalf of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District and the residents and businesses within this community, thank you for your willingness to serve in a volunteer position. I wish you best of luck in the remainder of your campaign. For those in attendance this evening and those watching, please remind your friends and neighbors about the importance of casting their vote on or before November 5th. Early voting again begins Monday, October 21st. Have a safe trip home and have a great night. Thank you.